wop, wop, wop. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to John Dudley Speaks. I'm your host, Champagne Poopy. And on today's episode of John Dudley Ranks, we'll be shifting gears and diving into something different. Discographies, particularly that of one Aubrey Drake Graham. Now, obviously, this has not been Drake's year, considering the massive L that he took during the Kendrick Lamar-Drake beef. But hey, it's almost October now, so we're getting close to Drake's month, as some would call it. So what better way to celebrate the OVO crew to break down everything the boy has released up until this point? Because no matter what, Drake is a cultural force in the music landscape, and will continue to be one, at least for the time being. And as he adds to this library of music in the near future, I think it's important to know where he's been, where he could go, and unfortunately places he's stayed too long. Coming out the heels of a big loss against Pusha T, you could say that Scorpion was doomed right from the start, but one thing with Drake is that you can't ever count out his ability to sway public perception. Pegged as a double album though, both rap Drake on one disc and R&B Drake on another, it's a great concept. In theory, that is. And I recall anticipation being pretty high, especially after Views smashed record after record in terms of streaming. So it's baffling to me that this project came together as fairly undercooked and overlong, which I think you can chalk up to Drake being very unfocused in a kaleidoscopic assortment of genres perspective. We got Quiet Storm, straightforward R&B, trap, ambient, and straight up pop cuts, only for each variation of this style to come off as sloppy and rushed. So you're left with sluggish song compositions with cool, interesting production, but not much else. However, it's not without its massive chart-topping hits like Nice for What, God's Plan, and In My Feelings. And Sandra's Rose, Emotionless, and 8 out of 10 are among some of Drake's best rapped tracks. But when it's surrounded by such lackluster filler, the project turns out to be weightless and forgettable. Probably the most pop rap that he ever got, Thank Me Later sounds like a debut record, so it makes sense that Drake didn't entirely know what his identity as an artist would be. That really doesn't save it though from its incredibly dated moments that boast Drake's most cringeworthy lyricism, as well as flat musical progressions, and its stuck in 2010 vernacular that ages so poorly. At the same time though, Kanye West's production on Find Your Love is sweeping and grand, matching Drake's sung delivery perfectly, so it's still one of the best Drake tracks of all time. Over, Miss Me, and Fancy suffered a lot from overexposure in 2010 and 2011, but still they're competent pop rap tracks with engaging sonics and a penchant for catchiness that Drake has lost in recent years. Yet this album is so marred by its abundant length, its unfocused instrumental direction, and reliance on features to make it feel like a blockbuster event, even when the songs at their core don't necessarily call for that.
Yeah. For the dogs,
This might be controversial given the legacy surrounding Views, but I think this is the point in time where the major issues of Drake's current output took root. Obviously the hits here are among the biggest of his career, especially the pop-leaning cuts like One Dance, Controlla, and Too Good, and you can make the case that Feel No Ways is the best Drake song, period. But upon re-listen, this album is just interminable. At 81 minutes, it just struggles to leave a lasting impression past its shiny, over-processed veneer, because for every strong moment like the aforementioned Feel No Ways and dynamite rap cuts like Hype and Still Here, you either get one of two things: thinly written pop R&B hybrid tracks that uninterestingly muse over failed relationships and status in the industry, or verbose, overwrought confessional raps that, well, uninterestingly muse over failed relationships or status in the industry. Also, pop style without Kanye and Jay, like on the single version, is such a short-sighted decision. I just didn't understand it then, and I still don't understand it now. But overall, it's a fine record that isn't too offensive or glaringly memorable, all because it doesn't really take enough time or effort to be either one of those things.
It's the ones that smoke blunts with ya, see your picture. Now they wanna grab the guns and come.
So Far Gone, the mixtape, not the EP that was released the same year, could have been essential Drake if what he turned in later didn't turn out to be essential and titanic to the mainstream. But isolating this in his discography, as well as the mixtapes that came before, like Comeback Season, this sounds very much like a rapper coming into their own. Best I Ever Had blends slick, Lil Wayne-inspired verses and a Kanye West-laden melodic hook to add up to one of the most exciting, enduring, and surprisingly romantic Drake songs ever. Also, the production from 40 is stellar, and I kind of wish that we just got 10 tracks just with his sonic touches all over it, especially given the strong back end production-wise. November 18th is a classic yet unsung Drake rap track that flexes his versatility and commanding mic presence over a killer DJ Screw beat. So you'd think I'd be saying with all these compliments that this is a classic, unbeatable piece of Drake lore, and it just isn't after all these years. There's a midsection here that's unfortunately just a miss after miss after miss, and even over the better musical passages, Drake Drake sounds hungry, that's for sure, but the dated aspects of his delivery, as well as the overall subject matter, really holds this project back from being fully enjoyable.
Yeah. Go Squad.
Yes, I do understand that this could easily be slotted as the worst Drake album, but yes, I also think that this is a better album than Views. Just not by much. Certified Lover Boy struggles from all of the same problems that started with the bloat of Views, but honestly, I think that Drake starts this album off really strong. Champagne Poetry and Poppy's Home feature some of his most elaborate raps and ornate production, and looking back at Fair Trade, TSU, and N2Deep, he makes effective use of tone and atmosphere by cultivating a consistent vibe. But while that extends to 7am, A Bridal Path, You Only Live Twice, and Race My Mind, the excessive chordiness, flat songwriting, and cringy bars really bring this project down for me. Although I'm a fan of it, Knife Talk attempts the 3-6 Mafia Dirty South delivery, and it just really misses the mark. Girls Want Girls is as boring as Drake gets, Way Too Sexy is high-key the worst song here, and Fucking Fans is painful to get through when you already want this album to be done. So yeah, while there's a lot that I love on this album, there's a good amount that I also hate. Given the fact that Care Package is a collection of unreleased tracks and Drake grails for the fans, I always found it to be a little disappointing. Some of these I was fine with staying off streaming, like How About Now, Draft Day, and Days in the East, as they never really grabbed me in the same way that his work on Nothing Was the Same and If You're Reading This did. But Trust Issues is a huge highlight on this, with its flip on I'm On One, and the timestamp tracks here are yet another W in that column for Drake. Josie Freestyle with J. Cole was another surprise that I enjoyed due to its nostalgic appeal, as well as Girls Love Beyonce and Can I due to the unique mood I always thought that they set. Yet it's these genius throwaways that are ultimately offset by bland production, which suffer from a heaping of overimportance and self-indulgence.
Yeah. I'm outside in an AMG.
I'll go ahead and say it. I think this is the most underrated body of work from Drake. Dark Lane demo tapes came during the COVID-19 pandemic without a ton of fanfare, understandably, but I feel like a lot of these tracks went unnoticed unfairly. D4L is a stunning Southside banger with Future and Young Thug that boasts all the best elements of each rapper's skill set. And When to Say When, Chicago Freestyle, and the Playboy Cardi featuring Pain 1993 show Drake at an introspective, ruminative, and relaxed state, something we haven't really seen from him in the 2020s since. But besides the wavy aesthetics of Time Flies, everything else here just kind of fades into the background or misses the mark. Most specifically the grime-tinged War and the creepily written Desires, which have Drake's worst tendencies written all over it. And of course there's the Tootsie Slide, Drake's attempt at TikTok virality, and looking back overall it's just pretty lazy and sad. So it's not exactly something that we can come back to with the fondest gaze. Yet another record that could be placed in the worst category. I actually don't think that For All the Dogs is that bad. In fact, I kind of like it, but it's not particularly good. Sure, it's not the best late-era Drake record, and it meanders quite a bit, but with the Scary Hours 3 Deluxe, you get some semblance of completeness that other Drake 2020s projects just lack severely. First Person Shooter, which inevitably kicked off the 2024 Kendrick Lamar-Drake beef, is a pitch-perfect display of Cole and Drake's expert interplay. I Don't Give a Fuck with Yeet and Another Late Night with Lil Yachty have a touch of rage that's infectious and weird. 8am in Charlotte is textbook storytelling Drake. Rich Baby Daddy is ridiculous and campy. And Slime You Out is dramatic and bold. Plus, You Broke My Heart and Stories About My Brother are among the best Drake rap tracks of this decade. So really, there's so much to like about these 29 songs. But that's the thing. It's 29 songs. What I can't get behind here is how the track listing is consistently hampered by a clashing of tones. So it turns out to feel like more of a hodgepodge of quality than it actually is. This is the first album on this list that I consider to be a genuinely good record, and while that might be controversial, I really don't care. It's pretty much everything that I wanted in a late period, pop-leaning Drake record. Honestly, Nevermind had the misfortune of releasing a mere month before Beyonce's revolutionary dance record, Renaissance. Still my favorite album of the decade, by the way. But make no mistake, Drake's take on House and Jersey Club and Baltimore Club in particular, with splashes of trap and Dirty South, is surprisingly really solid to me. The easiest complaint here could be Drake's singing on Falling Back, which isn't very good. but I really didn't mind it all that much given the vibe of the track. The instrumentals on Jimmy Cook's, Currents, Sticky, and particularly Massive are astonishing in their scope and atmosphere, and are full of quirks and personality and character that don't feel as polished or clean cut like most modern day Drake releases are. He also takes some creative swings here that I really miss from him, like the guitar parts on Ties That Bind and the pitch down vocals on Liability, as well as the uplifting Lion King type chorus on Downhill. So aside from some missteps that are glaringly boring or just out of place, I still love coming back to this album.
Draped in all designer, draped in all designer, draped in all designer, draped in all designer.
Something we're not likely to see ever again given the state of their relationship. Drake and Future capitalized on the hype of If You're Reading This, DS2, and Where You At, and holy shit, What a Time to Be Alive still hits. Obviously the major highlight is Jumpman, which was instantly iconic upon release, and has become a blueprint of sorts for mainstream pop trap crossovers that endure on the charts. But I truly think that where this project succeeds is in its conciseness and brevity, something that both rappers can be criticized over in recent years. Metro's production here is furious, uncompromising, glitzy, and in your face, with tracks like Big Rings pulverizing the audience through the mood it sets. Scholarships to me isn't one that's particularly aged well, just because it sounds so corny when Drake's rocking Kentucky blues on these hoes. It just sounds so fucking stupid. And Plastic Bag is a pretty weak and forgettable track, but otherwise you got Digital Dash kicking this thing off authoritatively, Diamonds Dancing indulging in a bit of a woozy dance pop R&B hybrid, and then On The Plug might be one of the most underrated bangers of each rapper's career. So yeah, after nearly a decade, this one still has a stranglehold over how we view mainstream trap today. Potentially remembered now as Drake's deepest dive into Afrobeats and dancehall, I always view More Life as, well, more than that. It's a total smattering of genres as a project, so to call it an album would be incorrect, and ultimately that's why Drake does refer to it as a playlist, so that is fitting. We got grime, R&B, and straightforward pop all across this thing, and for the most part Drake does them all justice. The grime tracks maybe don't age as well in light of the recent L's that Drake has taken since this release, but they're fine in general, and they're pretty competent in how they pull off the style. I think the strengths of the tape really come from tracks like Blam, Madiba Rhythm, Fake Love, and most specifically for me, Ice Melts, that have more of a buoyant, positive feel than any 2010s Drake output. But then you have some of his best bangers of the decade on here that aren't talked about nearly enough, such as Guile Chester, Portland, and Sacrifices, which make incredibly effective use of each feature, especially Young Thug on the latter. Glow with Kanye may not hit as well as it intends to, and Teenage Fever doesn't exactly age well in this current environment, though I really do like the song. But aside from that, you really can't help but be pleased with what Drake accomplishes on this project, and that's never more apparent than by the time that we hit Do Not Disturb, which acts as a credits roll for this album. Sorry, playlist.
Leave your phone, come to mine. The cash at hand.
Call it a Drake and 21 album, call it a Drake featuring 21 album, whatever it is, it's great. Just call it great. Her Loss was the most hyped that I had been for a Drake album in quite some time. And for me, it met those high expectations and in some respects even surpassed them. Rich Flex, despite all the memes, is an iconic moment in both Drake and 21's discography, and both deliver astounding performances over an insane Take Keith and Vinyls beat. I continuously find myself going back to Major Distribution, On BS, and Back Outside Boys, where I think Drake perfects his chameleon-like delivery on the latter, mimicking a Baby Keem, Lil Baby type flow, and it's fantastic. Privileged Rappers is one of my favorite songs here, with the laid-back feel and the choppy staccato hook turning out to be immersive as hell. The back half might not be as strong, with misfires like Circa Loco and Broke Boys failing to click musically. And Pussy a Million suffers from the Travis effect on the back end that really takes me out of it. Yet Middle of the Ocean and Jumbotron Shit Poppin' might be one of the best 1-2 punches of Drake's career. And the album finishes strong with a killer Metro beat on More M's, as well as a stark closer from Drake that wraps things up better than anything he's released since Views. Okay, now we're really talking. 2011's Take Care has taken on its own mythology over the years, and that's no accident because this was really the moment where Drake became Drake. The simp anthems are abound on this one with Shot For Me, Marvin's Room, Doing It Wrong, and The Real Her. But here's the thing, they're very well done. There's a strong lovelorn sadness at the core of this record that paradoxically matches its brash confidence, and truly I think that's the essence of what makes Drake great. You could trace the origins of auto-crooner R&B back to this project if you wanted to, even if shades of it mainly kicked off due to elements of 808s and Kid Cudi's debut. But looking back, the rap cuts are also stellar. Headlines is still a classic Drake track, and Make Me Proud, though a little on the dated side production-wise, has a nostalgic aftertaste that I can't help but look back and respect. It's just got classic Young Money written all over it. The legacy of this album doesn't stop there, with EXO and OVO linking up on Crew Love, and the feature on Buried Alive interlude from He Who Must Not Be Named is absolutely electric. So while the only thing that holds it back is its bloated length and some mild pacing issues, Take Care deserves its rightful place in the upper echelon of 2010's rap classics. I wouldn't be surprised if most people put this at their #1 record for Drake, and I don't blame them considering this is one of his best works, and if not for Yeezus, probably the best rap album of 2013. Tuscan Leather remains the best intro of Drake's career, with 40's multifaceted instrumental layering 3 movements into the track with ease, giving Drake an excellent canvas to annotate his state of mind expertly. The mid-tempo jams here have a tinge more of the cold and detached nature that he's failed to really tap into recently, with Furthest Thing, Connect, From Time, and the mega hit Hold On We're Going Home, all brilliantly mixing auto-croon and ambient pop elements, but the rap cuts are furious and incendiary to this day. So Start From the Bottom, Worst Behavior, and Wu-Tang Forever turn out to feature Drake's versatility in delivering relaxed hooks and energetic bars. And though 305 to My City and Own It don't exactly coast by due to their musical progressions and Drake's overall performance, the album's buttoned up quite nicely with an incredible outro of Pound Cake, Paris Morton Music 2, boasting an impeccable Jay-Z feature that's amazingly outmatched by Drake's conversational long-form verses. Quite possibly the day that Drake turned into an undisputed icon, his surprise drop of If You're Reading This, It's Too Late is the apex of the Drake formula, and his credibility. The dramatic concoction of production stylings from Boy Wonder, 40, Wonder Girl, and Party Next Door is stirring and exceptional in its texturally decadent aura. Legend is trap pop R&B at its finest, kicking the project off with a reintroduction to Drake that's dingier, sleeker, and more dynamic, filled with a different, more defiant energy. Speaking of energy, Energy has some of the most enduring quotables from Drake, but they're met with a minimalist beat that allows Drake to have space to drive the track forward. 10 Band, 6 God, 6 Man, and Used To all serve a similar purpose in their audacity and looseness, but it's really the bold swings where Drake succeeds the most, notably on the multi-phased Know Yourself. I myself have never been a fan of Party Next Door, but his work on the feature end, as well as Lil Wayne and Travis Scott, is terrific and all builds to highlight Drake's talents, rather than lean on their verses as a crutch. But then Jungle and 6 PM in New York work in tandem as a farewell to this early era of Drake's discography. And to me, it's a stunning culmination of this 3-record run, one that's perfectly reflective of the time that it was released, but simultaneously has aged like a fine wine and how it's influenced so much of current day musical trends.
Hey, what?
So yeah, there you have it, Drake, ranked. I guarantee that my mind won't change on this as time passes and as Drake releases more music, and time will tell what his legacy will truly mean in the grand scheme of music as a whole, but I think it's important to recall that most of the modern slate of mainstream rap has been dictated by the trends that Drake established in his most popular era, so it's important to continue to evaluate how these projects age, with regards to taste, fads, themes, and the overall artists themselves as a person. So expect a volume 2 of this one, maybe 10 years down the line when we have a little bit more distance from the Kendrick Lamar beef. But hey, that's all I got. See ya!
Happy we could connect, for sure. I've just been all over the place.
What the fuck is this?